Gentlemen, thank you for being with us today. Allow me to start by mentioning three names: Johan Norberg, Katalin Che, and Alena Tranchel, and congratulate them for being awarded with Liberal Award organized by European Liberal Forum and ALDE Party. It's an important moment for us to celebrate, especially on today's important meeting where we're going to talk about the conference on the future of Europe, but also because today we celebrate Human Rights Day. It reminds us how important it is to fight for freedom and liberties, but also reminds us how many people are behind the bars or they are sacrificing their families and wives because of the autocratic regimes. And liberals can play an important role in fighting for freedom, for liberties, for justice, rule of law. Allow me to thank you once again for being shoulder to shoulder with us in this fight for many decades. And many more will come because we have you, members of ALDE Party, dedicated political activists, freedom fighters, politicians, and we all want to change Europe for better. Dear friends, welcome to the third Hans van Baalen town hall meeting on the future of Europe, this time in Rome in cooperation with Europa. Thank you. Thank you for your assistance, but also thank you, Emma and dear friends, for your strong contribution on the conference on the future of Europe. We are very happy to see you here with us in the hall and online. It's great to see many people who want to discuss and shape the liberal future for better. Today's meeting adds to a series of town hall meetings named after ALDE Party's late president Hans van Baalen that ALDE Party has hosted over the past months and will continue to do in 2022. Hans was very passionate about this topic, and these town hall meetings are also part of his legacy. The main goal of the town hall is to truly put European citizens at the center of the debate and bring them closer to conference by giving them the opportunity to share their vision, their thoughts and ideas on how they see the future of Europe. We are all here to talk, but mostly to listen you, your proposals, your ideas, your commitment and your dedication for your project. And that's why we are here to discuss how we can make it more efficient. European citizens like European Union, but they want to see it more effective in working for them, be it on global level, but be it on national and local level. There is a need for change because European institutions are not designed for 21st century. They are designed rather to 20th century, but we live in different realities. We live in realities where rule of law is challenged every day, where freedom and liberties and NGO activism is shrinking in many countries. We live in realities where we have to compete with global powers, just to name some of them: Russia, China, US. And for that, we need to change European project, to make it more efficient, to make it more understandable for its own citizens. And conference on the future of Europe is giving us a good opportunity to start a discussion. Of course, we count on European Parliament, and we know what the European Commission and what the European Council will say. But also we want to have our vision, liberal vision, how to change Europe, how to give hope to hopeless, how to make European institutions more efficient, and how they can deliver to us, to the citizens. This was my initial remark. Please allow me now to welcome the co-host, my colleague and friend, Timmy Dooley, ALDE Party co-president. And after that, Timmy, you invite Emma Bonino. Thank you. Please, Timmy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ilhan, and thank all of you who have journeyed to be with us today. It certainly is nice to be back in a room with more than a screen or a microphone, that there's actually real people physically in front of us. It's been some journey this past 2 years. It's been a challenge to all political parties in attempting to come together to continue with our work, develop our policies, and take on the next chapters. But there are immense learnings, which I'm sure we'll talk about over the weekend in this hybrid conference. I'm really pleased to be welcoming you to this, the Conference on the Future of Europe event here in Rome. And I'm particularly pleased that the ALDE Party took a decision to name these town hall meetings after our dear friend Hans van Baalen. It's a fitting tribute to him and for the work that he did on behalf of liberalism, on behalf of political parties, on challenging those that had sought to go against the rule of law that had become such a fundamental aspect of everything that we believed in. He did that in domestic politics, he did it in European politics, he did it in Liberal International, he did it on the world stage. And it's a really, I suppose, a relatively small thing that we're doing in his honour and memory, but it's an important one. I'm looking forward to the debate, particularly to hearing from our good friend Guy Verhofstadt, who we're really thankful for being with us this afternoon. He has, yet again, on top of many important roles throughout his political career, taken on a really important role at this time, that of one of the co-presidents of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And I have every expectation that he will raise the challenges as he has done in the past, and will come forward with an appropriate set of proposals. Because quite frankly, we have gotten too used to the European project as it exists. Sadly, too many people have. Not enough has been done to challenge the attacks on the rule of law, particularly in countries like Poland and Hungary. Attacks on the free operation of media, the approach taken to the judiciary. These are issues that are fundamental to what we should believe in as Democrats, let alone liberal politicians. So I think at this particular time, because of the way in which political ideologies are changing to some extent, and because of that retrenchment towards some level of nationalism, and it's been a challenge for us now for some time, but has been exaggerated in recent times. Never before was it more important for the outcome of this conference to really shake things up, try to recenter around the aims and objectives and the expectations of our citizens and our voters. That's a big challenge, no doubt about it. But I think that we have the people on board who can guide us through that, who understand citizens and have done so for a very long period of time, and who recognise the tremendous benefits that membership of the European Union brings. Coming as I do from Ireland, small country on the periphery of Europe, we have seen how that retrenchment towards nationalism has impacted on our country, not by our voters, but by the actions of our nearest neighbours. May not necessarily have been a straightforward or a truthful campaign, but it was a campaign that was won. And that's where we've got to be careful about having a free media, a media that's not influenced by the political elite within any country. And there's nobody questioning democracy in the UK, but we saw whereby a campaign was hijacked by certain sections of the media with willing participants and agitators within a political process that was not to the benefit of their citizens, I might suggest, but certainly not to the citizens of my country or many other countries in Europe who had a close working relationship. So I'm looking forward to the presentation today and to the further outcome of the work that the conference is doing. It gives me great pleasure in Rome to call on Emma Bonino to come forward now and offer a local welcome, a true Roma welcome, a true Italian welcome. Emma.
Sì, sì. Buongiorno. 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 No, I understand that the weather outside is not, let's say, it's gray, sad. And I'm sorry for you, because Rome is beautiful normally. But yes, we are powerful, but not so much as to book good weather for your visit. We send faxes everywhere to provide sun, and nobody listens. Seems discussing Europe. You can discuss, and nobody answers. Now, in any case, my very, very warm welcome in Rome. In a good time, meaning in a difficult time. But that is just the difficult times where it's needed to meet, to continue to dialogue, even when we can imagine are a little bit useless. It's not true. In any case, I stick with the sentence of the great person who said once, Europe has been a dream for the few. It has become the reality for the many. It will become a necessity for all. We are in the many. And if it has to become a necessity for all, depends also on us. Not only, but also on us. Sometimes Europe makes me sad. But then looking around, I see nothing better. And so I accept, with the promise myself to make it better as much as possible. Can I tell you how ashamed I am, and I was, when I saw a few thousand refugees from Belarus stopped by Poland with ferry. I was really ashamed. In the cold, no food, no medicine, no assistance. So we have a continent of 500 million people. The most developed country, not only in terms of PNB, but in terms of social security, pensions. Look around. That doesn't exist in China, doesn't exist in Africa. Unfortunately, it doesn't even exist in the US. In Europe, it's there. Maybe a little bit obsolete, maybe it should need a reset, but definitely, from all this point of view, we are lucky to be here. And these 500 million people are letting few thousand desperate migrants die in the cold. For me, it's unacceptable. And I think that if Europe is a land of value, not a word of value, if Europe is a land of value, these things are unacceptable, like letting people drowning in the Mediterranean, or even worse, trying to save them only to bring them back in Libya and under torture, lager, etc., etc. It brings me just to say that Europe is our destiny, I agree, but it needs improvements. Democracy is one of these systems which is not the perfect one. Churchill said, as you know, is the worst one compared to all the others. But we are losing the sense of humanity. This is what I think I wanted to Because Guy, I hope you can give me some hope on the conference going on Europe. I must confess that I'm not exactly over-optimistic. Not because the items to be discussed are not important, but there is one item for me extra important, which is lacking totally, which is the institutions. And if we don't address the question of the unanimity, for instance, or of the lack of capacity of proposal from the European Parliament, and we stay continually like we are, I think we have not understood where we are living and where we will live. That's why. And not because I am a good person also. I am a good person, by the way. But in my country, sometimes it's said to a kind of visionary somebody living on the moon that doesn't have the sense of reality or the political realism. Forget it. It's not me. I understand very well the geopolitical, strategic implication, etc., etc. But I also know that when you are convinced that it's not only the P&B and the money who makes life acceptable and decent, we can negotiate much better. So I just wanted to wish you 2 days of good work, but on different issues that I think very interesting. But Guy, I don't think you are responsible, but if we don't insist in saying that the institutions in Europe need a reset after so many years from the Lisbon Treaty, we are just looking another way without addressing the real problem. If we don't arrive to have a common security policy, a common defense policy, we, frankly speaking, a friend of yours who was quite ironic said to me one day, Europe is an economic giant, a political wharf, nano? A defense shame. Was one of my colleagues from Belgium. Insomma, l'Europa rischia di essere un gigante economico, un nano politico e un verme militare. I think it's maybe too negative, but if we don't change route and we don't change, we risk to go exactly there. A big space of economic trade, etc., and nothing else. But our ambition, our dream, our hope is totally different. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Emma, for your powerful words. As always, grande Emma, when it comes to Europe and how we can build our European Union. Thank you for being with us and also sending this very positive pro-European message. Before we start, let me read you out some of the rules of this house. The event will take place fully in English, so no translation will be provided. We will start with some opening remarks, from the speakers. After that, participants in the hall and joining via Zoom platform will be able to ask questions and share their comments and ideas. Next one, for those present in the venue, just raise your hand and make your question clear and louder. For those joining online, use the chat function on Zoom to write your question or to ask for the word and ask your question directly to the speakers. A colleague from the ALDE Party Secretariat will be monitoring the chat throughout the event. Please ensure that your microphone and video work correctly and that you have your name and country visible. A kind reminder for all of those joining online, please keep your microphones muted unless you are speaking. Now, allow me to welcome our distinguished speakers that you all know for today's panel. Olga Stefanishina, Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration of Ukraine. Please, Olga. We mentioned the name of Guy Verhofstadt already several times, I hope for good reason. Of course, for good reason. Guy, co-chair of Executive Board dedicated to Conference on the Future of Europe. Please, Guy. Delighted to have you. Benedetto Della, Vedova, Undersecretary of State for Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Secretary of Europa. Please sit next to Guy. And last but not least, Antoaneta Asenova, President of LYMEC. Please, Antoaneta. Well, I want to have a dynamic discussion today with all of you. And let me start with Olga. What role do you foresee for countries outside the European Union? Because this is not only about European Union of 27, this conversation is for the future of European Union. How do we see European Union with Western Balkan countries, with Eastern partnerships, especially in your case with Ukraine?
Thank you so much, Ilhan. It's a great pleasure to be here in this very distinguished group of people by representing not only my government, but also the Ukrainian Party, servant of the people, who has a strong willingness to cooperate with the Liberal and Democrats over the Europe, which is a part of the ideas we share. So the question you're putting is really interesting, because the conference is about the conference of the future of Europe, but not only European Union. So it's very important that all of the Europe could be engaged in this process, and we are happy that through these discussions we could be engaged. I would start with the very simple issues which should be clear before we start discussing the perspective of the future, is that where we were, where we are, and where do we see ourselves. So we see that basically the European Union has played a very strong role on the post-war period in terms of economic development, mobilizing and uniting everybody over the same values. But now we understand that the whole world is facing a very severe challenges, but also the very strong transformations related to post-industrial era, like digitalization, climate change, globalization. And this is something where European Union has been always playing a significant role, but the new leadership is expected also from our side. It is really important to understand that those countries from the region I represent, like Eastern Europe, but also Western Balkans, that we are not the ones we were 20 years ago. We have self-committed ourselves to European integration, and it brings its fruits. Ukraine has been undergoing through a very dynamic process of reforms, which brings us closer and closer to European values, to Copenhagen criteria, but also which makes us stronger, more resilient, and more capable and more contributive towards the developments within European Union. So for us, it's really important that when we are talking about the future, to take into account a number of points. When it comes to the reform, which will be presented in I think half a year, it's important to take into account that there should be, first of all, the policy of engagement. because the future of Europe is no more lying only within European Union. And those policies and vision the European Union forms directly affects all of the countries outside of the European Union. So the all-European and engagement policies should be essential in the policies when we're talking about digitalization, when we're talking about the green transition and the economic and trade development. But also it is very important for us, those countries like Ukraine, who has been a country reforming itself, transforming itself, but also fighting the actual war on its territory launched by Russian Federation. It is really important for us to see the strong leadership and strong commitment to make sure that European Union is a global player. It is expected, and this competition between global powers directly affects those countries and those regions who are struggling for democratic transformations, who are successful in these democratic transformations, and this leadership is essential for countries like mine to make sure that we keep this dynamic, and no matter what are the political cycles or the political configuration in our country, because 7 years ago people were standing on the European square in Ukraine fighting for democracy, fighting for freedoms, dying basically for this freedom. And this is not the political slogans, this is part of our DNA. So whenever you see a Ukrainian saying that that we're fighting for democracy, it means that we're sometimes even more dedicated to these values than many of those who are living within European Union. And this leadership is something we can contribute to, and this is something that we are expecting from. So I would stop here saying this very initial remarks, and we'll be happy then to get closer to the discussion.
Thank you, Olga. Very, very good points made by you on European Union being global power, but also how to engage on different levels with Eastern Partnership countries, and in particular case with you, but also to show that you engage as a country, you engage as a political party with our MEPs in Brussels, also with our commissioners, liberal commissioners, and that you decided to come to Rome and to express your opinion about the conference. It's a big message to us that we are certainly going to work together. And as we spoke about the future plans, in March we will have a big conference in Kiev dedicated to future of Europe. There will be a big conference there. And Guy, the COVID is a striking point for Europe. And there is a direct question to you from Diana Lea from Latvia. And certainly she thinks that the conference is a good opportunity to reform European Union. But looks like the authoritarian states like China are better in managing crises like COVID. Better in managing because they have a different system. And will the concept of democracy be undermined if authoritarian countries such as China demonstrate that it can be better manage the crisis? And the question follows with the second one, and at the same time be economically more successful. What is the role of Europe in this crisis management?
Yeah, I don't know if that works. Yeah, now it works. So they have given me a good...
you want it good.
No, they think that they can cut it off, this one. So that's the reason that they have given it to me. Yeah, so thank you very much for the opportunity, Jan, to be here. And I think that we can start the discussion on the Conference of the Future of Europe by talking about Ukraine. Because everything what is happening around Ukraine and what happened the last years around Ukraine is proof of the need for the Conference on the Future of Europe. Yeah. In the conflict that we have there, we have the will of a country and people to be independent, to be free, European values, to be not only independent and free, but even to see their future as a European future. We see in that conflict a big power, Russia, who doesn't allow that, and who thinks that this is their game, their part of their property, I should even say. We see in that conflict also how weak we are. I remember the day that together with Hans we went to Maidan to announce the sanctions that the European Union has taken at that time, 7 years ago. Well, we are still not capable to do that, to repeat that when it is necessary in a fast and effective way, because we are dependent in a certain way. Look to our energy policy, for example, from Russia. And it is then the Americans who have to come in and to push us, to take sanctions, and to say to Putin, if you go too far, there will be a cost, and sanctions will be prepared, what we are doing for the moment. So if you look to our tensions around Ukraine, it's exactly all the problems we face, all the weaknesses we have, you can find them in it. And so Ukraine is a very good example why we need a conference on the future of Europe. You talked about China, I talk about Russia, we can talk about India, we can talk about the US under Trump, but also under Biden. And the conclusion is every time the same. The world of tomorrow, dear friends, is not a world of nation states anymore, of 199 nation states. The world of tomorrow is a world of powers, coalitions, alliances, on a continental scale. China, that's not a nation. Forget it. It's not a nation. It's a civilization. It's Han. And there are many hundreds and ethnies and nations inside China, inside this civilization. And it is, a very cruel civilization in a certain way, as we've seen in Hong Kong, as we will see maybe also with the Uyghurs, as we see on a daily basis. That's a civilization. India is also not a nation. There are 2,000 nations in India. 2,000. So if they have to organize their country based on the principles of European nationalism, they would have 200 or 2,000 Indias somewhere on the Indian continent. They have 20 languages they use. They have 4 religions in India. But nevertheless, it's a big country, a democracy, it's the biggest democracy worldwide. The same is the case with the US, and the same is the case with many parts of the world. The world of tomorrow will be, if you want it or not, a competition. That sounds familiar for liberals, no? A competition between different standards and different models of the world. The way the Chinese and the Chinese Communist Party is looking to the world is a little bit different of our view to the world. And I don't want to live in a system dedicated and decided by the Chinese Communist Party, where in fact the whole technological revolution is used, is abused to control their society, to control their people. And I don't want to live neither under the umbrella of autocrats like Putin, like the Ukraine doesn't want, or Erdogan, and there are others that we can give as an example. So what is at stake, we have to be aware of that. That is that after 1989, we thought liberal democracy have won, and Fukuyama even wrote a big book about that. You remember that? The end of history. It was finished, the ideological competition and the ideological battle. Free market economy combined with liberal democracy, up, over. Even in Russia, they were applying it in a certain way. The reality is that the history has never ended. Certainly not with that book, and that in the meanwhile, we are in a new phase of the history of mankind, where it will be a competition, a fight of what will be the future of mankind. Will it be based on liberal democracy? Yes or no? And that's not only a question outside the European Union, it's now also a question inside the European Union, as we see it in Hungary, as we see it in Poland, as we see it in I add also Slovenia to it, because that's the next example, bad example that we will face inside Union. Therefore, the question is how we organize this European Union, this European continent, in a world where there is such a competition between different blocs, and superpowers, you can name it, and at the same time defend our model, our values, our standards, our way of life. That is certainly not the standards of other parts of the world. That is at stake. And the answer that we have given with the three institutions is already in a certain way positive, and say, yeah, we cannot continue like that. We cannot always be too late, doing too little, too late, as we did after the financial crisis, as we did with the migration crisis, as we did with every crisis that we have faced. We can say that COVID, we did it a little bit better in any way than we did it with the financial crisis, because we did something, what was not the case after the financial crisis so many years ago. So that is at stake. Can we survive with this European Union, with this European continent, in this new world order, with what we have on the plate today, of how it is organized today? And the answer is no. There can be a moment that the European Union could disappear. There are people who are saying, yeah, Europe is eternal. Yeah, that's eternal. And the European Union is eternal. No, it's not eternal. There is no political organization, even not the Roman Empire. We are in the center here of the Roman Empire for the moment. Well, it was not eternal. There were many, certainly, Roman politicians who thought that it was eternal. It was not. Well, will be the case also for Europe if we don't change it, if we don't reform it. It will go, yeah, it will face extinction towards the pressure, the enormous pressure created by other superpowers in the world. And we can feel that every day. So that's the purpose. What needs to be changed? How to change it? And I respond immediately to Emma Bonino in a positive way to say, yeah, also institutional questions will be on the table. Because you cannot make a distinction between, well, this is politics and this is institutions. That's stupid. Because bad institutions have as a consequence bad policies. And if you have not the institutions, you cannot even develop policies. And at the same time, yeah, the policies are, yeah, the objective. The objective is not to have a fantastic institutions and to do nothing with it. No, both are going together. So we have to stop that stupid discussion in the union saying, yeah, what is now the most important? The policies of the institutions. The one is interlinked with the other. You cannot make a division between the one and the other. And that's at stake in here. And the second thing, what is at stake, is that we do it in a new way with the novelty, the involvement of the citizens, what we never did in the past. What I do tomorrow, I don't stay for the second day, Ilhan, because I go to Florence. In Florence, we have the third round, the last round of the citizens panels running. Tomorrow and after tomorrow in Italy. And it is based on their recommendations that we will formulate reforms. But this participation of the citizens is not a passive one, where they come and they say what they want and they go out. No, they stay in the room. They will be there when the MEPs, the MPs, the ministers, the commissioners will conclude on the reforms that we desperately need. And what I hope and what we hope is that the presence, the active participation of the citizens will be the turning point in this whole exercise. Because there they will create, in my opinion, deep pressure where it will be based on what it will be possible to find agreements between the institutions and the political cycles in Brussels and in Strasbourg to change something. Thank you.
Yep. You're right, we had many failures on our attempts to change European Union for better, but for first time ever, three institutions are signing together, which gives a hope. And the second hope is that the citizens will put their ideas. The citizens will guide institutions and political leaders. And hopefully we'll make it successful, but you're already doing a great job in conference. Benedetto, I have a suggested question for you from Gabriele Ventani. Gabriele Ventani from Italy is asking you, what will be the future of trade? I don't know, it's a broad question, but he comes with a second question, and it's more related to strategic autonomy. We had a great discussion in Paris last week, organized by European Liberal Forum, Guy, Hilde, Sandro Gozzi, Valérie. We had a good talk about what we can do in the future with the strategic autonomy. And it's also a big question. How do you see the strategic autonomy with your Italian eyes?
So thank you very much. First of all, let me thank the ALDE for remembering here in Rome Hans van Baalen, that was president at the time when Più Europa joined the ALDE as a full member. Well, the question is straight to the point. Of course, I think that free trade is essential for not only for us liberals, but is essential inside the EU. I think that free trade inside the single market is really a best practice that we can show to the world, and I think that trade policy is a good example on how EU can function in the interest of the citizens and in the interest of freedom at a global scale. I think that we have to maintain our commitment to have globalization driven by rules. That means WTO, that means the trade agreements that only EU can sign in the interest of each and single member state, as it was with Canada or with Korea or with Japan. The bloc can have can negotiate in the best interest of our companies, not each single member states, not even Germany nowadays can negotiate it. Of course, when it comes to the strategic autonomy, well, first of all, the idea, I subscribe what Guy said about the necessity to act as a bloc in the global competition. Today is the World Day for Human Rights, for instance, and we have to say that probably if we look to an EU perspective, things are on the average at the EU level going better, not everywhere, but on the average it's going better. We recognize more rights about LGBT community, elder people, disabled people, and so on. But on a global scale, the situation on human rights is getting worse and worse. If we consider China, for instance, and what is happening in China with artificial intelligence. And we have to act as EU as soon as possible to have a sound regulation and to try to set the standard, at least for the democratic world, about the use of artificial intelligence in the interest of the people and serving the freedom of the people, and not the opposite, as it is happening in China, with the great power of collecting data by the Chinese state. But, of course, strategic autonomy is first of all about diplomatic and military common policy, defense common policy, that it's urgent. We are close to Libya now. When 10 years ago was the crisis in Libya after Gaddafi, France has its own agenda, Italy has its own agenda, and the result, EU has no agenda, EU as the European Union. The result is that now in Libya we have Russia, we have Turkey, and Europe can touch the ball. Strategic autonomy is also about the raw materials and energy. We are experimenting during the pandemic and after the pandemic shortage of, not shortage, but high cost of energy. That it's due to the fact that we have no real common policy on energy, no common storage of gas neither. We are discussing if it's correct or not to open the new pipeline, Nord Stream. But we need gas from Russia, we need gas from the southern Mediterranean coast, and we are not be able to have our own strategy on energy, as the US did in the last decades. 20 years ago, US were depending on oil in the Middle East. Now they do not depend on oil in the Middle East anymore, because they are a superpower also when it comes to energy and oil. And a result is that they are not so interested in the security of the Middle East as they was in the previous decades. We have the shortage of microchips and semiconductors. Well, so far, the main provider of semiconductors for Europe is Taiwan. That is a free place, good place where to conduct business and probably so far to live. But of course, we have to develop an autonomous strategy in terms of energy, in terms of semiconductors, in terms of vaccine, in terms of research and development. And just to conclude with the answer, I think that we have to find the balance, but it's possible to find the balance among free trade, not only inside the European Union, but also among European unions and the rest of the world, and at the same time to have some good policy in order to develop a strategic autonomy in terms of energy, semiconductors, raw materials, and so on. But to develop this policy, we need, and I agree with Guy, we need sound institutions and good institutions prepared with powers, rules to do all these things. So far, we have power about trade policy, and trade policy, I think, is functioning. It's functioning very well. Of course, we have to reform everything. We have to reform also trade policy. But trade policy, being one of the few really EU policies, function very well. Italy is one of the second power in terms of exports in Europe, and now is the first one in the last semesters. I always say to the Italian companies, this is thanks to the EU. Being part of EU is the reason of your success in exports. So we can balance free trade and strategic autonomy.
Thank you. Thank you, Benedetto. You described rightfully on foreign affairs what we call exactly in Brussels Europa a la carte. Europa a la carte can do only too little, too late. But moving to the younger generation, because this conference is unique with a lot of things, but certainly is unique because it includes younger generation. And Antoaneta, knowing you and knowing LYMEC, you guys were always saying, well, we want to discuss Europe, you want to discuss Europe. When we are going to discuss Europe? You discussed many times Europe in your conferences, events, and what are the findings? And the more important question comes from Waya Comerna from Spain, and is how you guarantee that the voice of young people are heard? It is a very legitimate question.
Well, that question, at this stage, I have the feeling should go back boomeranging to the two of you sitting in the panel, because what we did, it's natural that the young people want to discuss Europe, because Europe is our future. We very well understand, we study how Europe came about from the ashes of war, and we cherish this, but this is history. Now it's time to make Europe of our generation, to make a braver Europe, to make a Europe that is fit to our expectations, to our living standards. And this is why, guided by this understanding, already when we first heard that the discussion on the Conference for the Future of Europe is going to be coming up, we at the European Liberal Youth Organization organized this platform where we got together all our youth organizations and asked them these questions. What do you think is not working? How do you think we can change them? And the results are two documents that we have filed on the digital platform. We've used every possible tool that this conference is offering to young people, be it from submitting the proposals on the digital conference, be it in participating in different, as you said, discussions, conferences, you name it, sending those proposals to the three institutions single-handedly as letters, addressing the members of the Renew Europe group, and discussing at this stage what needs to change of the conference itself. Between our leaders of our youth organizations. And the thing about young people and what they want from this conference, not from the general discussion of the future of Europe, but what we want from this conference is to see concrete outcomes and concrete ambition. Why? It's because we're not interested at who the culprit is. Is it the council? Is it the whole institutional setting? Is it the treaties? We're not interested who is at fault. We're interested, how do we make our future better? How do we live a better life than our parents? How do we step up one step further and, cross to that future? How do we change what is not working? And we very, very clearly see what's not working. I'm not going to go to it because Mr. Verhofstadt painted that picture very, very well. And we have answers to those questions, and we've tabled those answers, we've submitted them to you, they're in your hands. Now, what we expect from you is concretics, something to come out of it, something to move forward Europe, to take a leap forward with European integration, to give us a better future, and yeah, to just be brave, because that's what young people are expecting from the current decision makers.
Well, the future of liberalism looks like it's in good hands. They have a plan, they have a strategy, they submitted their proposals. We take it from them and implement it, put it in policies like Mr. Asmani does for the group. Now it's time to your questions. I turn to the audience here. I see Rudy is willing to go first. Please, yeah, microphone will come for sure. Introduce yourself and the organization you're representing here. So Rudy, first question, and then I saw a gentleman behind Rudy. Yeah, and Nino Jakovčić, former colleague Nino Jakovčić, is with us.
I introduce myself for people not knowing me. I'm Rudolf Rentschler from FDP, Freie Demokratische Partei in Germany. For short, for a lot of people, I'm Rudi. I have a question especially to Guy Verhofstadt, also for the other ones. Guy Verhofstadt told Europe should act as a bloc, and that's also a question of institutions, same as told us Emma Bonino. Now, how can we advance with the institution? What's your idea? We have had two visions. Some years ago it was Macron-Sorbonne talk, and now we have a vision in the German coalition. The coalition treaties are the hands of the German liberals going quite far for closer European Union. Even at the final stage, we imagine decentralized federal European state. Okay. It's the final, but there are steps between, and how can we go on, for instance, with a conference on future of Europe, the citizens, but there also should be qualified politicians also to be implied, since a lot of citizens do not know very much about European institutions. Then here a little remark to Pure Europe, always speaking from free trade. The Liberal International is speaking of free and fair trade. I'm very scandalized if you forget the name fair. Free and fair trade, for instance, we have also objections to CETA and other, which says free trade alone is not so good. Okay, thanks a lot for the question.
Thank you so much. Europe is your passion, which is good, always good to have you here. Nino Jakovčić, former colleague from Croatia, good to be with us. Croatia.
Thank you very much. My name is Nino Jakovčić. I'm coming from Croatia, a region on the northern Adriatic Sea, region of Istria. a very liberal region in the last 30 years. And I started my career 30 years ago during the war in Yugoslavia. That's the reason why I want to say very, very clear. We need a European army. We need not an alternative to NATO, but we need our security, our forces, and please do something on this issue, because without a strong Europe, and army also means be strong, we will not be so important in the world. And the last thing, please don't forget the countries of Western Balkan. Today, Europe as a whole, but Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Albania and Kosovo are not a whole. There are countries, nice countries, and we have to help them. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We started our town hall meeting exactly from Sarajevo to send this positive signal to the region that they all belong to the European Union. There is a process, and ALDE Party will assist as much as possible with our member organizations in helping them to gradually connect to the European Union. Third question, please. Okay, take two more. David from UK, and before that, the gentleman.
Hi, my name is Yuri, and I'm from Europa, Italy. So my question is about human rights and rule of law. And I would like to ask what us liberals can do to make sure that human rights and rule of law are respected within the European Union. We see that clearly Article 7 isn't working very well. There have been some steps that have been taken. The European Parliament and the European Commission have started infringement procedures against Hungary and Poland, for instance, but that's clearly not enough. So my question is, what can we do in the short run? And then I have an opinion. I think in the long run, doing away with the unanimity vote at the Council, which is kind of the problem at the moment, can do something. So would you agree? I guess I know the answer of some of you already. Would you agree with that? And how can we make sure that that happens?
Thank you, Yuri. Good to see you after so many years. Good liberal, good individual liberal. David from UK, Lib Dems. And thank you for organizing all these events in UK. I gladly participated to many of them.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, David Chalmers from the Liberal Democrats in the UK. And as you mentioned, Ilhan and Timmy, both of you, and I'd like to thank ALDE for the engagement that you gave to us in the conferences that we held throughout October in the UK. They're all held online. We had about 14 different conferences, hundreds of our members engaged, looking at the future vision for the European Union and for Europe as a whole, but also for our own sort of relationship with the EU and how we as a party can sort of get closer and develop policies towards the European Union. It has been a really, really fantastic sort of project for ourselves. It's really energized our party. As I said, hundreds of members from across the country engaged in those discussions. And you touched on the sort of question earlier on. For those of us that are outside the European Union, and you know, Olga replied on many of those countries that are looking towards immediate entry. Those countries like the UK, Switzerland, Norway, that are outside, and it's probably going to be, we have set ourselves as a goal, the Liberal Democrats, to take us back in to the European Union on a long-term basis, but we have to actually work towards developing a closer relationship with the EU. And so how do you see the EU developing to be able to engage better with those countries that are outside the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your question, but also say thank you for your dedication to work in a close manner with ALDE Party and to keep fighting for European aspirations of UK people. Guy, most of the questions were related to you. I propose you start, and then others will put their inputs.
Well, in fact, I'd like to answer to all the questions. I think that they were all very interesting. So the last one on the UK. I was 2 days ago on the television. I was looking to a fantastic film the darkest hour on Winston Churchill. You have seen it maybe, that film, like crazy good film. And you say, why are these people who fought with us outside our common European project? That is the most crazy thing that you can imagine. And so if you see this film, you see the dedication of Winston Churchill, in a certain way, in his war cabinet, totally alone, against all the naives around him, fighting for democracy, for liberty, for freedom, even not receiving from Roosevelt the necessary airplanes and so on, but with an enormous conviction. Yeah, Europe exists today because of that conviction of this man and of that people, of the British people. So there is only one place of Britain for Britain that's inside the European family. That's the only place you play for. And I'm pretty sure that if you continue your work, what you are doing for the moment, there will be that majority will be there again. Not tomorrow, maybe not in a few months' time, or maybe a few years, but certainly there will be a next generation who are saying, look, in this world order, we have to be there. And we need also the UK to do that, for a number of reasons. For reasons of values, defending values, for reasons of the internal market, don't forget it, for reasons also to defend our European civilization and values in this new world order. Who can do that better than the UK with the European Union, and the best is inside the European Union. So I'm very supportive for everything what we can do to create that link with, and to continue to have that relationship with Britain. One of the ideas I got, it never materialized, was to give the possibility for a European citizenship for those British citizens who are saying, yeah, but I am European, I want to continue to have a European citizenship. And I think it will re-emerge now in the conference, that idea. There are citizens who are proposing that, saying, wherever I live, I want to keep my link, my relationship with Europe. What is a fantastic idea, and what we have to cherish. I wanted to come back also to the Balkan history. Nino, that's his real name, so Jakic, that's another name. Nino is his name. Nino, I see that your capelli are very long, eh? That's since you are outside the parliament, so, okay. But yeah, the Western Balkan, let's be honest, it's completely stupid what we do. It would be better that the Western Balkans inside the European family, then we don't need to continue to have soldiers on the ground in the Western Balkans. Because that is what we have for the moment. In Bosnia, in Kosovo, still European soldiers there. Because And it seems to me that the future of all these countries is inside the European Union, and we have to continue to work for that. And on the defense, then I stop, because otherwise I will monopolize this whole the debate now. On defense, I'm completely on line that defense needs to be, we need to create a European defense community. That's for sure. By the way, that was the first project. If these French were not so stupid in 1955 to vote against it in the French National Assembly, we would have today a completely different world and a completely different Europe. Completely different. Can you imagine that we had approved the European defense community in 1955? With everything what it implies, because it was a whole army, yeah? So everything, and then at a certain moment also a constitution to organize all this, and then it was voted down in the French National Assembly for stupid reasons, where we will not go into detail, but we need that defense commitment, because it's the biggest waste of money in the European Union for the moment. Europe spends 4 times more than Russia on military. 4 times, eh? So that is then 40 times more than Ukraine, eh? on defense. That is what we spent. And together with the UK, we spent more than the Chinese on defense. And it's true, we spent only 40% of the Americans. But we can only do 10% of the operations of the American army. So I'm a lawyer. I'm not a mathematician. Nevertheless, I was Minister of Budget at a certain moment in my life. But I'm always saying, if you are Minister of Budget, you don't need to know anything about mathematics. You need to the word no. That's all the thing that you need to know. So, and I know as a lawyer that if you spend 40% of the Americans, you can only do 10% of the American operations of the American army, that you are 4 times less effective, no? And that's because the duplication in Europe. We duplicate everything. We have the highest number of soldiers of the world that we have. But we are not capable to stop the Russians when we come this side without American help. We have more than 103, 105 military equipments, different military equipments in Europe. It's less than 20 in the US, to give an example. So it's the biggest waste of money that exists. And now, inside the Democratic Party, the Democratic think tanks, inside the administration of Mr. Biden, they understand it. For the first time, the Americans are saying themselves, it's time that you organize your defense on the European level the fastest as possible, because we cannot continue like that. And when Biden comes to Europe, to the NATO summit, a few weeks ago, it was, what he said, he talked about what? He talked about China. In my opinion, China is the South Pacific, eh? That's not the North Atlantic. But in any way, what this means is that he and we have to see the future of NATO in a different way. It will be a world treaty organization to defend democracy worldwide. That will be the future. And inside that, there will be the need for a strong European pillar. And this strong European pillar, that is what we have to create the fastest as possible. That's not against NATO, that's strengthening NATO. That's strengthening the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And the Americans will be now the first to ask for it, to say, do your job, do it. And don't continue to have an inflation of bilateral agreements between that country and that country, but it doesn't change nothing on the ground. Nothing on the ground. When we start in Libya, after 2 days, we have to phone to the Americans, we have not precision ammunition anymore. If we had the problems in the Western Balkans, Nino, it were the Americans, Clinton, who did the job. Not we. And Clinton was explaining there in America where he did that operation, because there was no American who knew where it was. In Kosovo, and the bombardments on Belgrade and so on, he did the job. And so we cannot continue like that. We cannot continue. We are not respected in the world, you know, because we are not capable to do that. And there, it brings me to my last point on the German.
Time-wise,
yeah, with you. Why I'm saying that? Because for the first time, these things are possible again in Europe. Because, yeah, let's be honest, for the first time we will see a French government, hopefully with a re-elected Emmanuel Macron, who is a very dedicated pro-European, and the German government, again, speaking the same language. Because let's be honest, the Merkel, I like Mrs. Merkel, I find that she's a fantastic politician, but for Europe, she did nothing at all. Nothing. When there was the migration crisis, he said, wir schaffen das. We're going to do it ourselves. It was not a European solution. Fortunately, with the COVID, there was this, COVID was, didn't know any borders, so that was the only advantage of COVID is that it is not, it has no national identity. With COVID. So what happened was that she was obliged to do something. So we, for the first time, we have now a German government with the same ideas, more or less the same ideas as the French. So for the first time, they will, again, using the same language. That doesn't mean that the French will speak German, or the German-French is impossible, but at least that will happen. And that is a huge, the conference for that has a chance because of this engine that, again, for the first time speaks and goes in the same direction.
Yeah, good. Benedetto, I give you a word, and then I turn to our online audience for 2 questions.
No, I want to add few things to what Guy said perfectly. This is when we will elect directly the president of EU, he is my candidate, of course. But you forget Italy, because this is a window of opportunity, because you have Macron, you have the new coalition with liberals in Germany, and you have the Draghi's cabinet in Italy. And when Draghi went to the parliament, he said, my government is a pro-EU government. È un mio governo, un governo europeista e atlantista, pro-EU and pro-good relations among EU and the US. And I think that what you said about the necessity of a common defense policy is one of the things that I was in the panel of citizens about the role of EU in the world, in the future, and the idea to have our own defense, common defense system is largely shared by citizens, first of all by younger citizens. I want to say a word on the answer that Yuri. Of course, we are back to the speech of Emma. We need to finish with the unanimity. If we want to tackle the rule of law and human rights inside the EU, we need to finish with the unanimity rules. What is going on with Poland and Hungary show that we need to end the unanimity. Even for one more thing, it's not only a domestic issue, but being, just not to mention a global power, being China, now you need just one government on your side when it comes to foreign policy of the European Union. Okay, you can, they are ready to pay a lot of money, to invest a lot of money, as they did in Montenegro, but this is another story. So they did just one ally inside the EU, they can block everything. Why, and I'm finishing, why the free trade policy, free and fair policy, but we are the champion of globalization rules driven, so that it means more or less fair trade. Why the trade policy is functioning in EU? Because you do not need unanimity. You can decide with a qualified majority. So, Yuri, you are perfectly right, because the situation of human rights is not going better worldwide, but we have some risks inside the EU, and we have not the instruments to block. I'm sure that the majority of members of the European Parliament, of member states, the Commission, the majority of EU citizens doesn't like what is going on against LGBT community in Hungary or in Poland. But we have no instruments, real instruments to block. And at the end of the day, I hope that the Commission will keep the point to say to our friends in Hungary and Poland, you are benefiting from the single market as nobody else. We have Italian companies that withdraw their investment from Italy and they go to Hungary and Poland. Okay, it's the rules of the game. We accept it. You are receiving funds from taxpayers in Italy, in France, in Germany. Okay, it's the rules. But you have to be compliant with the rules of the club. Otherwise, things are getting worse and worse.
Thank you, Benedetto. Now we go from Rome to Cyprus, to Praxua Antoniadou, good liberal friend. Are you with us, Praxua? And the next will be Clara Puig from Spain.
Thank you, Ilhan. Good evening, dear friends from the United Democrats in Cyprus. I have a question, a comment for Guy and partially for Antoaneta. Our concern is that in order to achieve the reform necessary to make Europe stronger, we need to gain the support of the people, of the EU citizens, and to have this support with us, which is, of course, the target of the process taking place now. But also, in order to have the support of the people, we need to have truly free media, as also Timmy mentioned in his introduction, bringing also the example of Brexit. And we see this issue of not essentially free media on the surface, but not in essence, and partially this may also be taking place in Cyprus. So I suggest that as part of the reform which is targeted, that we find a way to introduce stronger safeguards for free media, to make this institutional, that there are institutional safeguards to ensure that media is truly free. And this also relates, I suppose, to what Antoaneta said, that yes, we know the history, Europe arose out of the ashes of 2 world wars, but this is part of history and we need to move on. Yes, but we risk, if we do not really have the people with us through proper information, we risk what Guy said, that the European project may not be eternal, and that in the end, this European project of peace and prosperity will remain indeed in history and will not have a future.
Praxula,
yes.
Evcharisto, we are under enormous pressure. Very, very good and clear points made by you. Thank you so much. Good to see you again. Antoaneta and Guy will answer your questions. We are going to Spain. Clara, please.
Hello. First of all, I wanted to thank all participants for being here today and sharing their views. I have 2 questions. One is for Ms. Stefanishina, because I found it very interesting what you were saying about the future of Europe, that is not playing anymore only within the European Union. And I wanted to ask, where does she see the relationship between the EU and Ukraine going, especially within the context of the present conflict with Russia? My second question would be for the LYMEC president, for Antoaneta. You know, I have been very involved in the development of LYMEC policies and proposals for the conference. But one thing that worries me a lot is that the people that are interested in the conference are normally people, or at least what I have seen, very involved in EU politics already, that are close to the EU bubble, but whenever I talk with my family or with other people that are outside, they don't seem to either have the information. I think I have explained to my parents what the conference was 6 times already, because it's not covered that much in the national media, and the role precisely of not only having the citizens that go to Strasbourg or the people that are really involved already in the conference being involved, but also the general public opinion. How can we ensure that we are getting this public support, or at least that this information is reaching the public? We want to see outcomes, yes, but if everybody thinks that just a few people took those decisions, would it be really something good?
Thank you, Clara. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. My proposal is this time we start with Antoaneta, and she will deliver her concluding remarks. I remember the famous conversation between Margaret Thatcher and Mikhail Gorbachev, when Margaret asked Mikhail Gorbachev, "How are you, Mikhail, today?" And he answered, "I feel good, but if you continue talking to me, I'm not that good." So the status quo in European Union today is good, but if you continue talking, looks like it's not that good. But there is a hope that with this conference, we can reshape European Union, we make it more efficient. And I would like to ask Antoaneta to start concluding her answers, but also, if you can, to finish the questions. One of my famous question: to you, conference will be a success if. Can you finish this sentence?
To me, conference will be a success if we have concrete results and at least unanimity is abolished. This is about it. It doesn't matter how we're going to achieve it. The conference will be a success if something concrete comes out of it. And that brings me to the two questions. Look, the platform gathered ideas, the panels encompassed the discussions between the selected citizens, but if in the end of the day, this is boiled down into proposals that are already on the table, proposals that the Commission is fitting within its current priorities, then indeed the whole exercise will be downplayed as an exercise of Brussels geeks. That's going to be it. And that is why it's very important that, as the two speakers said, that citizens are included in this process. And this is why, as I mentioned, in September, we gathered the presidents of the youth organization and we came up with this call of action, seeing it as a kind of like the pause between the two parts of the game, to give our conclusions of what we think needs to change. For example, to have more influencers included in the whole process, to have more national leaders speak about the conference, and of course to engage more national media. And for that, if we, the young liberals, want this process to not just stop with this conference, but to continue being a platform for the citizens to have a direct conversation with decision makers, then there are a few things that we need to change about the conference itself as well. For example, these panels could happen in one different capital every time so that you capture the media. Because the reality is, when US elections are happening, in the US capital, there's 10 times more European media than there is when the Conference for the Future of Europe is gathering in Strasbourg. This is ridiculous, and this is something that we need to tackle. We as society, media, and generally all of us, we need to constantly change this process. And to finish everything that we've been discussing today, the Conference for the Future of Europe is about evolution. It was said during the discussion that there will be no end of history, and that is very much true. History is moving, and we have no other chance but to move with its pace. For this, we need ambition, we need changes, we need to look forward to the future. We cannot risk to sleepwalk through this chance.
Benedetto, for your conference will be a success if?
If it will not be a failure. Well, I think that we have, I hope that it will be possible that the outcome of the conference will be some, maybe few priorities decided with a huge majority, but unfortunately the success of the conference at the end of the day will be in the hands of the institutions that will decide, European Parliament, Commission, and unfortunately Council. But I hope, and the national parliaments. But I hope that it will be possible to have some few clear points of improvement that are needed in the interest of our values and our interests as companies and as EU citizens. If we are not able to change the rule of the game will be the same, but it will be the game of the past and not of the future.
Thank you. Guy, back to you.
Yeah.
What is a success?
Well, first of all, that there is no misunderstanding. The conference is not there as a sort of PR operation towards the public opinion. That is not that's not the conference. It's not a pure saying, oh, look, we listen to the citizens. Look how good we are, fantastic. Hop, and it's over. That's not the conference. So I'm less busy with the question, are there now 40,000 accounts opened by citizens or 35,000 accounts opened by citizens? I like that there were millions of accounts opened. There are in total 4 million unique visitors have been on the digital platform. So that's not bad, but that's not 4 of 1. That's 1% of the population in Europe. But that's not the main point. The main point of the conference are, in fact, the citizens panels, where we have randomly selected 800 people in 4 panels of 200. Every of these 200 people are real people that for the first time are participating in that. So we know that from day one that on these 200, 193, 94 of them have never been in contact with politics, have never been involved in Europe, have never been involved in such an exercise. So the legitimacy of the whole exercise lies there. Not in the fact that there are 3 million visitors, or 4 million visitors, or 5 million visitors, but in the fact that in the citizens panels, we receive from the citizens panels a number of recommendations and proposals that are really backed by the entire population of Europe. We cannot put all the entire population of Europe in the meeting room, but by doing that, we want to create proposals and pressure for proposals that will be very difficult to deny by even member states. What the kind of member states say? Oh yeah, that's my citizens who ask for that. I don't want it. So, you know, when Parliament is asking something, I can understand that member states say, yeah, but when Parliament, together with the national parliaments, with the Commission, supported by the citizens panel, saying, look, it's time now to start with the European intervention force. It's time to end unanimity in a number of items. It's time to end Sofagate, so that there is at least one phone number, and that Kissinger can finally find it, that one phone number. So things like that, it will be very difficult. Or for example, on a totally other field, like in digital, it's time to create our own standards, digital standards in Europe, instead of copying the American or maybe tomorrow applying the Chinese standards. It's time maybe to use our capacity in 5 and 6G of European companies to use it. We are talking about Huawei, and we have Nokia and Ericsson, who are the only in the world who can compete with them. It's time, for example, to have our capacity in semiconductors. If you need a semiconductor in the world, how you do it? First of all, you go to LYMEC in Louvain in Belgium, where there are thousands and thousands of people working on the next generation of nanochips. Then you go to ASML in Eindhoven to ask for the production lines, because they have nearly a monopoly on these production lines of these nanochips, and then you put it in Taiwan. And that's the way it works. Instead of creating our own capacity, we have everything to create our own capacity, but we don't do it. So the conference is about that. The conference is about how to overcome the classical, traditional obstacle in the decision reform-making process of the Union. Because it's not the first time that we see that. It started in '55, but then we got the French to blame for that. But now we cannot blame the French anymore, because they are in favor of, Macron is in favor of a huge reform of the Union. So and he's in the chairmanship for 6 months, from the 1st of January on. So we hope, and there is a new German government, by the way, with some federal views in it. And there is Draghi in Italy. And there is a new government in the Netherlands, with maybe also more pro-European views, and so on and so on. So, and at the same time, we are attacked on the outside of the Union. In Ukraine, we are attacked in a number of places in our neighborhood and outside our neighborhood. So, I think it could create an environment that something can come out. I'm very prudent now. I say something can come out. And because of the pressure that will exist. And that could be, at a certain moment, a crucial choice to make. Because let me remember the way the American Federation has been founded. That was not with unanimity. That were 9 states who were and 4 were against it, and the 9 said to the other 4, look, we are losing the war against the Brits here. Sorry, but that's history. Or we make a federation, or we don't. We are against. Well, we are in favor. It's 9 against 4. What do you want? You join, or you go out? And all 4 joined. Even Rhode Island. Even Rhode Island, the rough state of Rhode Island. So to tell you that in a certain moment we are at a point where, we need to put the nail and met de namer op de nagel. How you say that in good English? But we need to do it. We need to do it now. And if we don't do it now, then we are in troubled waters.
Okay. Thank you, Guy. Olga?
Thank you, Ilhan. Colleagues, of course, there are so many reflections, but I would start by saying that I will answer your question by the end of my remarks. And I think it's very important to hear the feedback from the perspective of my part of Europe, of my region, of a country. And I will start my remarks by saying, which country do I represent? I represent a 40 million country with the most educated people of Europe, which has been recognized by all the ratings. A country producing and exporting and importing everything from the organic food to the most sophisticated defense techniques. A country dedicating 5% of its GDP annually for the security and defense budget. A country who has raised the IT market 15 times for the 2 years. A country who votes and lives in the smartphone. And we definitely have something to suggest to Europe. And what do we expect? We expect really a continental power, the European Union and Europe to become a continental power. Because I fully agree with the remarks that this is really essential for us, because there is no challenges that could be faced by the, as President Duda was referring, which is not maybe very in fashion, I mean, to quote him right now in these circumstances. But it's really important now to recognize that EU is not a closed, sophisticated club of players. And the decisions which are now taken, they're so impactful and they're so unbordered that they could not be faced by limiting with specific borders, especially when we're talking about the energy crisis. This is something which could not be put in a specific border because we should face these challenges together, because Russia is really outside of EU borders, but it plays the energy market, and it plays the rules by skyrocketing the prices. And these prices, they have no borders, they have no limits, and they are not subordinated to any regulations, you know. The same comes to the green transition and the climate change. This is something which is, again, is not limited by any borders. And if we want to reach climate neutrality and to reach the ambitions of the Paris Agreement, we should act together, and there should no be borders in that regard. And this is very important that if we face this reality, we should understand that following this reality, there should be a reform of the institutions. And it is absolutely essential when I talk about the engagement and all-European approach. It would definitely bring us not only to the enlargement discussions or the aspirations discussions. It's vital to reconsider the unanimity itself, because there is a number of areas where the decisions can no longer be taken only by European Union, because they impact Ukraine. For example, if European Union imposes new CO2 rules emissions, all the dirty cars go into our market. And this is the reality. And if Poland has a migration crisis on its borders, it immediately affects Ukraine. And in fact, while we're sitting and having discussions here, 500,000 of Ukrainian people are working in Italy in different services, and 2 million of people are living and working in Poland, and millions of EU citizens are staying in Ukraine. We have a free trade area, we have a single aviation area agreement, so we're so interconnected that there's no other way but to limit ourselves with the decisions which could be limited by a border. So reconsidering the unanimity in that regard is absolutely essential, because reconsidering unanimity is the new enlargement to our regard. And finally, I want to answer the question, the successful outcome of the conference would be then defined by our servant of the people team with the two dimensions. If the issue I've been reaching you all with on the all-European and engagement approach will be addressed and presented in a very clear institutional dimensions, and the proposal to reform the European Union and adjust it to the challenges. But also, if I will see that this reform will open the way to the new flow of the reformers, of the liberals, because this is exactly where the emotion we have here in Ukraine. I'm here represented with the 4 members of the Ukrainian administration, and we're all under 40 years, and this is the average age of all of our reformers. And we are the fresh blood of reformers struggling and having the freshness of each and every value filled at our borders, at our territory, and every word which is now fixed in the Constitution of European Union is really in our hearts. So we have this energy, and we want to see this energy and this way to new reformers, and that's why I guess I am here to say that we stand with you. We're ready to contribute. We're ready to bring this energy, fresh ideas and fresh reforms from our territory, and to bring it to European Union, and to make sure that there is really a strong ambition to have the continental power reborn in our part of the world.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. After a very powerful message from Olga, I don't want to prolong this discussion. Thank you so much, Olga, Guy, Benedetto, Antoaneta. For me, it was a privilege to moderate this panel. Can I ask for a big applause to our speakers? Big applause to you and to all those following this conference behind the screens. Thank you so much.
Thank you.